What is going on, everybody, and welcome back once again. My name is Jordan, also known as JMonster. I want to thank you guys for joining me for another replay battle. Today I've got a 1v1v1v1 free-for-all battle on a grassy plain that shows off a whole bunch of different factions. We've got orcs, we've got men from the east, and of course we've got some elves on the field as well. So it's a nice little smorgasbord of different factions for you guys to enjoy. So without any further ado, let's get into the army comps and then to the replay itself. I hope you guys enjoy it. So the first army we're going to look at today is the forces of the Misty Mountains, being commanded by yours truly. And I'm going to spend a little bit more time on their army comp than I am on the others, because the others you have seen quite a lot of at this point, I think, and there's not as much to say. But in this particular video, I want to focus a little bit on the Misty Mountains and some of the concerns that I've heard voiced by the community about their viability as a faction. Now, in my opinion, Misty Mountains need to be played like a horde faction, essentially. You need to double down on your numbers and try and just outlast opponents with just the sheer numbers of troops that you can send to people. You can just drown your opponent's infantry. You can also bring some really solid support units as well. So in my opinion, Misty Mountains is one of the best well-rounded factions that the orcs have available to them. Mordor really heavily relies on their elites. Gundabad relies also on their elites, but they're also very much a rush-oriented faction with not a lot of options for support units. And things like that. I'm sure I'm missing some of the orcish factions, but Misty Mountains have a very well-rounded roster. They've got a lot of trolls, they've got a lot of AP, they've got a lot of decent skirmish units, and they have numbers as well. Now, their elites are still powerful, and I think the Blackback Berserkers are going to be getting a little bit more numbers, but you don't necessarily need a ton of elite units to be successful as the Misty Mountains. So I hope that I can show that to you guys today and maybe increase your confidence a little bit in the ability of these fierce orcs from the mountains to do well against a variety of opponents. But in any case, let's take a look at the army comp. I've got 2 units of Warg Riders, one here, one on the other flank. I've also got some Warg Skirmishers, just a single unit. I'm going to use them mostly as support until their ammunition is out, and then I can be free to use them a bit more aggressively. Over here we have the Bolgs Champions. I probably should have given them the armor upgrade so that they look like this guy right here, because once their armor is upgraded, they take on a new look, and I really think that they look amazing. They look like the Hobbit orcs from Gundabad, essentially. Over here I've got 3 units, yes, 3 of the Mountain Orc Berserkers. Now, I'm not sure if they're going to stay capped at 3. 3 is a lot. It is a lot. But they are very fragile. They've only got about 3 melee defense, next to no armor, so it is possible to shoot these guys to pieces really, really easily. And of course, even elite infantry, even with the extra HP that these guys bring to the table, elite infantry can cut these guys down to size real quickly. But yes, it very much emphasizes the Misty Mountain Orcs approach to battle, that being bring an incredible amount of numbers. But they make a good tar pit with their AP as well, an excellent support unit. Over on both wings, I've got 1 unit of Black Heroics of the Mountain. And they are probably the best unit, I think, the best non-HP unit in the Misty Mountains roster. You are capped at 2, however, so you need to be careful with how you use them. They are a little bit expensive. I think they cost about 700, 750, something like that. My front line is composed of 4 units of Goblin Spears, which are AP, by the way. They've got really nice defense as well, and they're going to be backed up by an additional 4 units of Heavy Goblin Halberds, so a ton of AP on my line here, and I've really built my army around kind of being able to take on all comers. So I've got 3 units here of the Goblin Archers, who have the same amount of missile damage as the Heavy Goblin Archers, but they have more numbers, but significantly less defense. I think the Heavy Goblin Archers have like 6 or 7 armor or something like that. They have a lot of armor, whereas the Goblin Archers I think only have like 3 or so. So it's much easier to shoot these guys to death, but of course they make up for that a little bit with the amount of numbers that they can bring to the table. But I think that's it. No, I actually have 1 unit over here of Goblin Infantry. Now, an important thing to note about the Goblin Infantry is that the first unit is free, and then the second unit is, I think, 200, and then the next one is 400, and so on and so forth. It just increases from there incrementally. But this is actually where my general's going to be hanging out. So you can see Azog himself, the Pale Orc, who doesn't quite have the same weirdness he had with his model, where there's like a lot of very hard edges. So he's looking a lot better in 0.95 than he was in previous iterations. But that does it for my army. Let's go ahead and let's see what my opponents have brought to the battle today. Over here we have a Lothlorien force being commanded by Starling. He's got a lot of Edhil Tirith, who are Light Elven Archers, which are now exclusive to Lothlorien, by the way. The Mirkwood faction, the Woodland Realms, they don't have access to the Edhil Tirith anymore. They've got they've got a whole bunch of other archers and stuff like that, so don't panic too much in that regard. We're just trying to, we're shifting archers around because we don't want everything to just be about shooting each other to death. We've got some Lothlorien archers here, 1 unit of Lothlorien, actually 2 units of Lothlorien archers, and a single unit of Galadrim nobles, who are very expensive, 1400, but they are all 2 HP and they have 8 armor, which is quite a lot. It is a fair amount of armor for an archer unit to have, and they've got more numbers than you would expect in a unit of their quality and their price range. Over here we got some more Edil Tirith, and out on the flank we've got a unit of Galadrim riders who are real good. They've got a lot of they've got 2 HP, they've got a lot of damage. Being a horse archer unit, they only have 1 charge, however, that's standard for all horse archers. But they've got about 17 or so damage and about 9 or so missile damage as well. And they're very accurate, so an extremely efficient unit. You just got to be careful with them. Here we got some Sylvan Spears, a long line of Sylvan Spears, and in the center we've got some Lothlorien Axes, yet more Lothlorien Axes, and a unit over on this end of Lothlorien Mounted Company, who are really good Lancers. They are, I would say they're some of the best Lancers, the best Elven Lancers in any case. I don't know if I can say that for the entire, 20 or so other factions, but they're definitely a strong runner-up to the High Elven Cavalry, so yeah, something to keep in mind when building your army. Actually, no, he's got 2 units of Lothlorien Mounted Company. Look at that, I managed to miss one of them. But that's it for Starling's army. Let's go ahead and let's see what Rune has brought to the battle today. Over here we have the Runic army being commanded by Bobo 16, or TF Bobo, I don't really know how he wants me to say that. He's got a unit of Luxian Rim on this end, and a second one over on the other side, flanking his very strong center of Lokeflag Rim, backed up with some Gamp Rim. Now, at the moment, the Gamp Rim are pikes, and they are Rune's, I believe, only pike unit, but they're not going to be pikes for much longer. They're actually going to switch over to halberds, and halberds are going to be getting some other changes as well. They'll make them a little bit better against cavalry, especially when cavalry charges into them from the front, and infantry as well. So yes, Rune is going to be losing its only pike unit, but they are going to gain a halberd unit, which means they're going to get some more AP, which is, it's a nice thing to do, and it does fit, I think, for Rune's overall theme as a faction. Out in front, we've got a ton of Eastron archers, or Eastron hunters. I think, yeah, there's only 3 units here. Yes, so this is post archer hotfix, and yeah, there's only going to be 3 of these Eastron hunters here on the battlefield. We've also got a couple units of Balkoth tribesmen, very expensive, and they're actually not bad in melee afterwards. And all javelin units do have a cavalry bonus. So yeah, be wary when charging into these guys, because damn, they can do a lot of damage to you. Over in the back, we've got some Campbell's Dragon Knights and a unit of Dragon's Wrath Warlords, who, this is just a lot of really scary heavy cavalry, and it's not something that can be dealt with easily by most of the factions here. I don't think I really have anything that is a big answer to these guys, aside from my wargs, and my wargs will pay a very steep toll in the process of neutralizing these guys. And Lothlorien, who is closest to Rune, they don't have a ton of options to shoot down this heavy cavalry. I mean, they've got a lot of armor, and they're going to stand up to that real well. But in any case, let's move on over here to the 4th and final player. We have the forces of Rohan being commanded by War Celtic, who I think is previously known as Ivar the Boneless on the Discord. And he plays a lot of Rohan, so I definitely had an idea of what build he was going to bring. But in any case, he's got a really strong Rohan force here that's mostly centered around its cavalry and its skirmish force. So in terms of kind of gauging the effectiveness of bringing a massed skirmish army, this is a pretty decent litmus test, so we'll see how he does. But in any case, he's got over here the Red Shield of Erkenbrand, which is a really interesting unit for Rohan. It's actually the only hybrid melee cavalry / horse archer unit in the game, as far as I know. Yeah, I don't think any other factions have like the melee cap bonuses that these guys have, plus the armor and plus all the other nice stuff. But yeah, they've got a little bit less ammunition than most horse archers do, so they'll run out of ammo faster, but that's just so you can throw them into melee and use them to kind of fill the gap in Rohan's roster, that being they have a serious paucity of melee cavalry. Surprisingly enough, they've got a ton of Lancers. They've got so many Lancers. They can drown you in Lancers, but melee cavalry, they've only really got 2 units that can fill that role, that being the Sons of Eorl and the Red Shield of Erkenbrand. Now over here on the skirmish line, I've got a couple units of Helmingas and 3 units of Riddermark archers. So a 5 archer army here, very heavily invested into his cavalry and into his skirmish forces. Got some First Marshal's Bodyguard. I believe this is the previously known as the Rohan Bodyguard. Very strong, medium Lancer unit with 2 HP. Over here we have the Aorate of Aldberg, previously known as the Royal Guard. Got a couple companies of them, 1, 2. And I think he's got one more. Yes, indeed he does. He's got some Sons of Eorl. 1 unit of Sons of Eorl and a couple units of Eowyn Shield Maidens who toss their Franciscas before getting themselves stuck in combat. And those Franciscas are really, really deadly. So they're going to have to be prioritized really, really quickly. Over here in the center, we got a couple units of Westmark Marshals. I think they had a whole bunch of different names and stuff like that previously. But at the moment, they are just Westmark Marshals, and they are very strong, elite, two-handed axemen. So naturally, they have AP. Over here, we got some Hornburg sentries. I think they're previously known as the Hornburg Guard, and before that, they were Helm Hammerers or something like that. But now they are the Hornburg sentries, and they are still very strong. 2 HP, AP, and a gigantic shield bonus, and some really heavy armor as well. Not easily picked off by archers, indeed. But I think that just about does it for the army comp, so let's go ahead and jump into the battle. I hope you guys enjoy it. Now, because I was expecting my closest opponent over here, that being Lothlorien, to deploy somewhere entirely different, I end up being kind of stuck out in no man's land with nobody really obvious to fight. So I was going to go for the rear of Lothlorien, but it looks like Bobo and Starling are going to be facing off against each other. So instead, I'm going to wheel my forces around. I'm going to slowly move towards War Celtic's army and his very deadly Rohan horsemen. This is the kind of situation that those horsemen are going to be real deadly, and it's going to be down to me using my wargs well to try and zone them out and keep them busy so that my infantry can win a fight that is very much in their favor, given the numbers and quality of the Rohan infantry. Over on this end, you can see both forces beginning to face off. Got Starling getting himself quickly into position. Oh, it looks like maybe he moved closer to Bobo than what he had intended, just given the way that this archer formation is kind of broken. Looks like they were issued a very hasty stop and fire command. So they're going to be peppering down the Eastron hunters here. A lot of these guys are going to fall real quickly. Meanwhile, the rest of the Easterling infantry is going to waste no time in getting themselves into melee. Over on this flank, a lot of bad news here for the forces of Lothlorien. The Dragon's Wrath Warlord and the Camel's Dragonites have both been committed on this end. And they're going to be charging headlong towards the archers, towards the flank of this spear unit. Actually, we've got some Maytherdi Last Galen. I guess they're Woodland Warriors? No, that's from DAC. But we've got some Elven Javelins here, which I didn't even realize were present on the battlefield. The Dragon's Wrath Warlord's going to charge hard into the front of the Maytherdi Last Galen. And those spear units, they're going to do pretty well, especially when supported with some of the cavalry and some of the spear units not coming in from behind. So this is definitely not the best engagement for that runic cavalry. In fact, the Dragon's Wrath Warlords have really started to drop here, and I think if he's not careful, these elite runic cavalry units are going to get themselves completely massacred, and then he's going to lose a lot of money and a big part of the advantage of his army. Although luckily for him, that hasty charge into those Maytherdi Last Galen has allowed the rest of his army to move in basically unmolested. I don't think he really took any javelin volleys. No, there's no like piles of dead men. So it doesn't look like the Elves of Lothlorien were able to leverage their skirmish capability on the approach here, and that's going to be pretty significant, I think, for the low number elves. Oh, I think that was a new horn. Yeah, I think Rune and Haran have both gotten new horn effects. So yeah, I think that what you just heard right there was that. And the Maytherdi Last Galen trying to deal with his cavalry here. The Dragon's Wrath Warlord is very much isolated in behind elven lines. So I think that's going to be basically it for these guys. Over here, though, looks like a big hammer and anvil strike. Oh, maybe not. They're going to charge instead into the Maytherdi Last Galen. Oh no, here we go. Going for the hammer and anvil against the Lothlorien Axemen, who are facing off against the Flag Rim. Not the deadliest charge, but ooh, maybe I spoke too soon. That could cause a rout here if Starling is real unlucky. It looks like the Elves of Lothlorien, brave stalwart warriors that they are going to be able to hold together and prevent themselves from fleeing and opening up a gigantic hole in the front of their lines. And things are just really not looking great here for Lothlorien. The rest of the Easterling skirmish forces have been able to move forward pretty well unmolested. Now Starling is kind of trying to play catch-up here, while some of his important AP units in the back, like the Maytherdi Last Galen, are getting themselves absolutely destroyed here by the Camel's Dragonites. It looks like Lothlorien just doesn't seem to have an answer. I don't know why the rest of his mounted company were just kind of sitting over here, not really doing a whole lot. I think that maybe they're trying to deal with some of the Camel Shadow Guard, which I didn't realize that Bobo had. Sorry about that, guys. Didn't realize I had my internet running in the background. But rear charge here into the back of those Camel Shadow Guard. Going to do a fair amount of damage to them, but the fact that they are running away like this is actually going to throw off the cavalry pathfinding a little bit. And those Camel Shadow Guard are only going to lose about 4 men on that charge. May 30 Last Gallon getting themselves set up to try and toss their javelin payloads into the rear of the Camel's Dragon Knights, just stop them from running amok in the back here and really causing a lot of problems for the Lothlorien skirmish line. But unfortunately, they're going to get charged from the rear by those Camel Shadow Guard, and Starling is going to be forced to disengage them and move for another angle, which is going to delay him even longer. Over here, the Lothlorien archers in close quarters against the Camel Shadow Guard. They're going to win that fight pretty handily. Over on this end, Ethel Tirith moving forward to, I guess, reposition, maybe try and put a little bit of fire into the Eastron Hunters, who are still very healthy, and maybe into the Backhaul Thrasmen as well. But they've had time to really do a number on the Elven front line. You can see that Lothlorien is beginning to crack under the pressure. And there's a lot of wavering here on the front lines. I don't think Starling's going to be able to hold out for too much longer. Let's go ahead and let's fast forward just a little bit here and see what Starling ultimately decides that he wants to do.
They have lost half their men.
Yeah, in the back lines, those Camel's Dragon Knights just being an absolute terror. Hammer and Anvil charge here into the back of those Lothlorien Axes. This could be the nail in the coffin, and that is going to cause the Lothlorien Axis to break, and therefore Starling's line it has been annihilated. You can see Lothlorien forces in full retreat now. Ethel Tirith now fleeing off the battlefield. The remains of his front line being forced back, and the rest of the elves are retreating hard over the field, trying to reposition themselves and get away from the victorious runic front line. There are still some infantry who have managed to keep themselves together. Got some spears here, and maybe we'll see some reforming with some of the other Lothlorien units that fled from the fight. But Rune has been left the master of this particular battlefield. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to pause it there. Let's go ahead. Let's move over onto the other end, which is where the fight between the Misty Mountains and Rohan is beginning to take shape. Now, as you can see, Rohan has moved his cavalry basically so they're in a position, one, to maybe intercept some of the forces from the Easterlings, but also to surround me. So with these missile units in my back lines, it could be a really big problem for me. And of course, if they manage to get in amongst my archers, ooh, that is going to be ugly. The Red Shield of Erkenbrand are no joke in close quarters. Over on this ending, see some of the 1st Martial Bodyguard, along with the Air Raid of Alberg, moving in, and it looks like he really wants me to commit hard in the center. But I'm fairly confident in my ability to beat these Rohan forces in an infantry fight, and also to zone him out on the flanks with my archers and my cavalry. You can see I've got my Goblin archers here in a good position to begin to put some pressure on either the Red Shield of Erkenbrand or on the Ale Raid of Alberg, or possibly even on the Bodyguard as well. But I've also got some infantry and some cavalry nearby to support them, and that is really essential, I think, moving forward into .95. I didn't find that I needed to do that as much, and people just generally didn't, but supporting your units and making them work together makes them so much stronger. It is night and day. So with these cavalry backing them up, my Goblin archers can basically just bully his cavalry out of position, and there's really nothing that they can do to try and support their front lines against my infantry that is rapidly closing the gap here, and is going to be in amongst the Riddermark archers pretty soon. So yeah, a lot of his cavalry is zoned out in the back here with fairly judicious, I should say, deployment of my wargs. Over on this end, I got my warg riders mixed in with my warg skirmishers and a unit of Black Orcs of the Mountain, and I've got them where they are because I don't want his archers to focus on them. I want his archers to have other problems, and you can see that they're busy with my archers, or they're trying to take some pot shots at my front line, but all of that is about to come to a rapid close, although those Francisca-wielding Aowen Shield Maidens really just did a ton of damage to my front line there by tossing those throwing axes, but I've got the numbers. I've got another wave moving in here, another unit of heavy Goblin Halberds. I can stand the pressure. If I can pull him into a war of attrition, essentially, that is one that I can win because I have just the sheer number of bodies to do it. Now let's see what's going on in the back here. You can see a lot of that cavalry has kind of joined forces. Some of them are sitting over there, the Elred of Albury. It looks like he's trying to just open up a gap in my line. He's got more cavalry than I do wargs, I believe, and he's got some really strong cavalry in the form of his knights as well. And they're actually currently back here. So I've got them well and truly locked down. Over on this end, I got another unit of Aelred of Aldberg of Aelred locked down as well. So he's just looking for a chink in my armor to charge in and maybe get it in amongst my spear, not my spear companies, my archer companies and things like that. Over here we've got my warg skirmishers tossing some javelins here all along the long axis of the Sons of Eorl. Some beautiful enfilading fire here, really going to ensure that they don't waste a lot of ammunition on misses or overshoots and things like that. So you can see one of the Sons of Eorl actually getting a nice charge there into, or actually one of the Sons of Eorl dying, but the Sons of Eorl generally getting a nice charge into my warg skirmishers. Big mistake on my part. Definitely don't want these guys in close quarters with the Sons of Eorl before I've had a chance to use my javelins. It's definitely a micro mistake on my end, but it does hold them down long enough for me to potentially come in from the rear with my warg riders. And now the Sons of Eorl really not in a good position. They're going to take a charge in the rear from some of the more deadly anti-cavalry units in the game, and Celtic is going to try and pull them out of there as quickly as possible. But the damage is going to be done. You can see a few of them dropping, and there's definitely going to be some HP lost there as well. Over in the back, you can see the rest of the Rohan cavalry still not able to risk committing. I will be able to basically descend on them, not just with archers, but with wargs and other nasties as well. I got my goblin infantry in the back here, my general's bodyguard. So there's not a lot of opportunity here, but it looks like Celtic is going to try and go for it. Aelred of Aldberg moving forward, being very aggressive, wanting to get a piece of my goblin archers. So I'm going to start to pull my goblin archers a little bit farther back and try and let him commit a little bit. You can see I've got a unit of warg skirmishers here in a good position to potentially flank, and I've also got the second unit of warg riders coming in from the rear, and they're also being backed up by some Bolgs champions. At the same time, rest of that Rohan cavalry moving forward. These Aelred of Aldberg are going to rethink that charge and begin to pull out again. Over here, First Marshal's bodyguard going to start to pull back, but it looks like they're going to turn around and try and take an opportunity here, a charge of opportunity against my goblin archers, but luckily I have my wargs nearby, Bolgs champions, and my warg riders. They're going to be able to rapidly move in and reinforce, and this is ultimately not going to pay off in the way that the Rohan player wants it to. Over on this flank, you can see I've got my Sons of Eorl. I think they're being... I'm trying to pressure them a little bit with my warg skirmishers, but I also do have another unit of Aelred of Aldberg moving in on this end as well. And now most of the Rohan archers have actually been... they've been disrupted, and a lot of them have been quite handily mauled in close quarters by my infantry. So the Rohan skirmish line hasn't really been able to do a whole lot, which is why I've got my warg units so close to his archers, because I have that ability right now. Over here, it looks like the Aelred of Aldberg are going to try and get a rear charge into my warg skirmishers. I'm going to try and pull them out at the last minute, and then begin to move in with my second unit of warg riders. These two units working in tandem together to try and deal with the superior Rohan cavalry. Over on this end, it looks like managed to get a piece of the first Marshal's bodyguard. My Bolgs champion's going to continue to chase them and to zone them out. This is definitely a fight that my Bolgs champions can win real handy, so I can basically bully the Rohan cavalry as much as I want to. Over on this end, I've got my warg riders pursuing the Red Shield of Erkenbrand, just trying to keep them busy and keep them away from the rest of the fight and not allow him to support his infantry companies, who are quite heavily beleaguered right now. But we'll go check that out in a second. Just want to make a little note here is that these two units are actually going to be chasing each other for most of the battle, so it's going to be quite the extended game of cat and mouse. Over on this side, looks like I've left a big hole in my line, and the Aelred of Aldberg are going to be able to come in and capitalize on it. In fact, they are actually got a nice charge over here against my Black Heroics of the Mountain as I move them in to deal with the AO Wind Shield Mains. But now I've got them nice and locked down. And over on this, and you can see, oh, this is going to be so bad. Look at this, Aelred of Aldberg, just as my general runs over to take his spot on the side of the Goblin Infantry unit, the Aelred of Aldberg unit is actually going to charge in there, and I think they kill my general at some point here. Yeah, look at that. Moving in with my Bolgs champions, doing my best to keep these guys locked down. And there goes my general, big charge there from those units. They weren't even aiming at them, they're actually aiming at my halberd, so I turn around the last moment here to try and fend off some of those cavalry. We are going to manage to take a few of them down with us, but let's take a look at the infantry fight right now. It's real tough. Over here you can see my Mountain Orc Berserkers taking a big charge to the rear from some of the First Marshal's bodyguard who have managed to escape the tender mercies of my Bolgs champions thus far. I actually lose a little bit of micro here on them as well. Now, I potentially could have punished him a little bit for this charge, but unfortunately wasn't paying attention to what my Bolgs champions were doing, and the Rohan player is going to be able to emerge basically unscathed from that. But yeah, now I've managed to break through the infantry, and I'm into his archers. I just have to keep the pressure on the Rohan infantry for as long as I can, and this is a big problem right here. This one unit of Hornburg sentries is really holding up a lot of my line and preventing me from just sweeping in here and destroying what remains of the Rohan forces. And over on this end, Westmark Marshals have managed to hold out until now. I think part of this is that I had my Mountain Orc Berserkers begin to sing the song of their people, as it were. The song that, it's like a chanting or something. It increases the morale of friendly units, but also lowers the morale of enemy units nearby. So that, I think, was a nail in the coffin there that allowed me to finally rout those guys. Also, wow, I can words. Also, I was shooting fire arrows at them, so morale, very important in this patch. Just one quick note on that here. Over on this end, Warg Riders charging into the air raid of Alberg as they run amok amongst my infantry archer companies. I think there's a couple units there, possibly. Yeah, there's definitely 2 units in here. They're causing me a lot of problems. I don't have nearly enough wargs at this point to go around for my back lines. Over here, we have the Sons of Eorl now closing in on my Goblin Archers. Meanwhile, my Bolts Champions in hot pursuit. With how much these guys have been weakened, it won't be an easy fight for my Bolts Champions, but they will do very well for themselves. Here we got the air raid of Alberg, cycle charging in and out. So I think there's also the first Marshal's bodyguard in here, possibly. Another hammer and anvil charge by the air raid of Alberg into my heavy goblin halberds. See that they are shaken, even with 180 men in the unit. Very, very easy to make goblins around. This is one of their big weaknesses. And something that is kind of an equalizer for the massive amount of numbers that they can bring to bear. Over here, we got the first Marshal's bodyguard moving in as Rohan tries to use their cavalry superiority to try and poke holes in my line. But I finally managed to deal with the majority of that infantry. Yeah, some of those Hornburg sentries are still there, but I've managed to get in now with my Orc Berserkers, and I think I'm trying to push through them with halberds and things like that. And over here, I've got some Goblin Spears as well, and we are just giving it to the Helmingas. Yeah, over here, the Aelwyn Shield Maidens, very much on the run. My Warg Skirmishers now out of ammunition, just being relentless in pursuing these units. I don't want them to be able to get off any of their volleys, especially not into my Black Uruks, who, oh man, just got routed by a very nice charge there from the first Marshal's bodyguard. But unfortunately, the first Marshal bodyguard doesn't have time to sit around and cut more of these guys down, prevent them from regrouping, because they have a lot of other things on their mind right now. You can see them charging towards my Mountain Orc Berserkers, and another big charge here from the rear by the air raid of Alberg, but I do manage to turn around my units sort of in time. And hopefully we'll be able to make those air raid of Alberg pay for it quite dearly. But at this point, the fight has basically been won against Rohan. It really remains to be seen how much damage his cavalry can do to my infantry before I'm able to destroy him, which is really going to determine the outcome of the battle overall. Yeah, the first Marshal's bodyguard here doing real well against my heavy goblin halberds, but I'm actually moving in, I think, with some reinforcements and with some heavy goblin spears. And they're closing in on all sides now against the first Marshal's bodyguard, and that's not going to be fun for them. These are all anti-cavalry units. Halberds are anti-cavalry as well. Fire arrows there into the air raid of Alberg, trying to rout these guys by dealing a lot of damage to their morale, but I think I end up frying some of my own units as well. Yeah, you can see some of my wargs dying there in addition to the air raid of Alberg. But finally, I am going to manage to rout these guys, and I'm going to try and run them down as best I can with my Warg Riders, my remaining Warg Riders, and yeah, try and prevent them from reforming if at all possible. But speaking of Warg Riders, as I mentioned, this guy's still on the hunt here. The Warg Rider's still trying to get a piece of the Red Shield of Erkenbrand, but it does pull a unit, very healthy wargs away from me, but it does also keep one of his melee calves and his melee cav units and a potential counter to my remaining Warg Riders away from the battle, and it's ultimately going to preserve that warg unit till late in the game, which is real useful to have, especially after my 2 opponents have basically exhausted each other. My other 2 opponents, I should say. But yeah, that's basically it for the Rohan army. At this point, I think it's fair to put it into full speed. You can see me pursuing them far across the field, making sure that as many of these units as possible do not reform and come back and cause me problems a little bit later. Big rout there. A lot of Helmingas running for their lives as this mixed force of heavy goblins, orc berserkers, and of course the redoubtable Warg Riders move in and just cause this massive rout here. Waves of panic just shooting through the Rohan infantry. What do we got over here? The first Marshal's bodyguard, badly mauled at this point, being held in place while my Black Uruks of the Mountains move in to deal with the Rohirrim. And there's still some cavalry left, some of the air raid of Alberg. I'm still trying to just pin these guys down and finally make them die, but it's really been a struggle so far. They are a lot faster. Rohan cavalry in general is pretty fast. and they're definitely a lot faster than my Bulks champions and my other Warg Riders, so it's definitely been a big problem trying to pin them down long enough to completely destroy them. Rohan, very, very slippery when it comes to this kind of fight. But ultimately, it's a fight that I think worked out really nicely for me. Let's go watch the fireworks while I talk about that. As you can see, a lot of my army still remains. I just really have to deal with this one unit of cavalry and try and rout them at all, if at all possible. Yeah, they're shaken from those fire arrow volleys. One final one right there is going to put them into wavering, but I'm not going to be able to get in there quick enough with enough units in order to scare them off for good. So again, another big charge. They're actually going to rout some of my less numerous goblin archers. I'm going to pull back my other unit to try and get them out of there. They are going to be pursued across the plains by the air raid of Alberg. Oh, come on, just die. I remember playing this game and I was like, damn it, just die. Just go away. And finally, my prayers were answered. And it's going to be the end of the air raid of Alberg. They're actually going to run right through my goblin infantry and potentially get a few of them cut down. Yeah, one or two of them just died there. My Bulks champion's still very healthy. I think I've only lost one out of the unit at this point, which is miraculous at this point in the battle because they've been just running all over the place. But yeah, ultimately, it's going to be a solid win against Rohan. I just have to deal with that one final unit of Red Shield of Erkenbrand. We're still running around being a problem. So let's go ahead and let's fast forward just a little bit. Take a quick look at some of our remaining opponents. Got some Shadow Guard here under Bobo and his Runic Easterlings. Runic Easterlings, kind of redundant. The Easterling force still has some pretty decent units here, like the Shadow Guard, and a lot of Loke Flag Rim. A lot of their infantry force still remaining, actually. Oh yeah, a very healthy force of infantry, and of course we've got some Balcott tribesmen as well. But I think he's moving towards the remains of the Elves of Lothlorien. So a lot of his force is actually going to end up being spent, I believe, trying to finish the 1v1 that he started a little while ago. And there's a few reasons for why we do that sort of thing. In testing battles, we try to respect the 1v1, just because testing battles are just that. They're for testing factions against one another. So we want to see how faction matchups fare before we move in for the kind of final confrontation that is inevitable in these kinds of free-for-all games. So yeah, Rohan has now been dealt with. I believe I actually managed to kill that unit of Red Shield of Erkenbrand with some of my Warg Riders, which is real nice. And I'm going to slowly but surely move my forces towards the engagement between the Sylvan Elves and Rune. Now I'm going to take my time, because I want to keep my forces together, obviously, and also because a lot of my forces are exhausted. If you look, well, a fair amount of them are in any case. Yeah, I got some exhausted troops right there. Tired, winded, more exhausted forces, etc., etc. And yeah, so a lot of them are going to be moving a lot slower than normal. And also I was very spread out, so it took me some time to marshal my forces and begin to move in force against my remaining opponents. But sorry, we're actually missing the Lothlorien Rune engagement while I babble on here, so let's go ahead. Let's take a look what's happening. Looks like Lothlorien has been swiftly overwhelmed by the forces of Rune. They just didn't have the infantry left over to really put up a big fight here against Bobo and his Easterlings. Charge from the rear there by the Loke Flag Rim into Lothlorien Archer is actually going to send a wave of panic shooting through that Archer unit, which may cause them to rout. Yeah, if they keep dying like that, they will rout. No, I think they're going to stabilize. There you go. Lothlorien Mounted Company still trying to do their best. Over here we got some Galadrim Riders charging hard into the heavy infantry, but that's not going to be very effective for them. They are now basically at the end of their resources. Yeah, another charge here by the Lothlorien Cav into the Runic Infantry is really kind of softening up Rune at this point. If I had to fight Rune head-on, then I would have a very hard time, I think, with the forces that are remaining to me, because Rune has some really nice infantry, and a lot of it is AP, but Starling is really doing a lot of my work for me here. More javelins coming in. I got some Balcott tribesmen, some few remaining Balcott tribesmen, a little bit of Runic cavalry left, not much. Camel's Dragon Knights charging in. Looking like maybe they want to get into the Lothlorien Mounted Company. Oh, that'd be real ugly for the Mounted Company. There you go, the new and improved Eastern Horn going off there one final time. And I think that's the Lothlorien General that just got cut down. Lok'Scion Rim moving in to try and zone out some of the Lothlorien mounted units. And slowly but surely, my victorious Misty Mountains army are moving in. Yeah, there's not going to be too much left, I think, for these two players to do against each other. So I'm just going to move in, and basically they're going to try and team up on me, which is exactly what you'd want to do in this kind of situation. With when facing an opponent who's still got a very healthy margin of their forces remaining. I think I've got about half of my army still left over. Belkot Tribesman here moving forward, trying to thin out the seemingly innumerable ranks of my Misty Mountains orcs. Tossing their javelins in, but they're going to come under some real heavy fire from my remaining archers. As my infantry begin to approach them, in tandem with the casualties they're receiving from my archers, they are going to break and start to flee. And over here, I think these guys might get off one more volley. Nope, they're actually going to break, begin to rout, and flee towards the safety of their fellows. What do we got over here? Runic cavalry, all the remains of them, 2 remaining Dragon Knights, charging into my Black Heroics of the Mountains, but getting pinned by my Heavy Goblin Spears. Those AP Spears moving in with a lot of damage that they can put into a cavalry unit. That's really the bane of a unit like the Camel's Dragon Knights, who are extremely heavily armored. Meanwhile, my infantry forces pursuing the remaining Runic infantry across the plains, almost getting my Warg Riders caught on some pikes there, and that would have been a very big waste. So I'm going to try and just move in with as much infantry as I can, but come around on the flanks as well and try and leverage not only my numbers, but also the fear effects that units like the Mountain Orc Berserkers and the Warg Riders can cause, which will, if I'm lucky, will make the Runic player break pretty quickly. What we got over here? Looks like the Bolts Champion's taking on the Galadrim Riders in close combat. Not even close to a fair fight for the Galadrim there, and they're going to begin to break real fast there in the face of that heavy cavalry, anti-cavalry unit, I should say. Over here, mounted Lothlorien Company going for my Goblin Archers. Got a unit of Goblin Infantry nearby, on standby, ready to move in and help. I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference. And that charge there actually might cause these guys to rout, given that I have lost my general quite a while ago. Oh, no, not this time. But it looks like the Runic Infantry is kind of standing up to this reasonably well, but I've got my cavalry in behind them, and I'm just able to leverage the fear and the morale shocks from the Hammer and Anvil, and that's going to cause the Runic Infantry to break basically everywhere. Let's go ahead and let's fast forward a little bit. There you go. And that's going to be the end of the fight. Now, my Misty Mountains army did manage to come out on top, and a lot of that had to do with, I think, how well I was able to zone out the Rohan cavalry, and also a few mistakes on the part of my opponent. He did let me get into his archers, which is a big problem. If I had those archers shooting at my wargs the entire time, he might have been able to strip away my wargs, and thereby my only bulwark against his cavalry. But because they got caught out, and part of that was a micro mistake, and part of that was I saw him moving forward, and I thought maybe if I start to run all my infantry at him, I might be able to catch him, or at least push his archers back enough that they won't be able to harass me too much on my approach. So part of that was me getting lucky, and part of it was I saw an opportunity. But ultimately, I think it was a big part of why Rohan suffered the defeat that they did. Other than that, me having a lot of wargs and just being able to keep his really strong parts of his army from supporting the weaker ones was what allowed me to ultimately overwhelm him and have a lot of numbers going into the late game. Like, I had a ton of Orc Berserkers left over, a lot of just mainline kind of trash infantry, and that's really where the strength of the Misty Mountains lies. It's in their ability to just drown you in a sea of bodies, and unless you can find a way to, 1, break their morale, which is quite weak, or 2, thin them out before they can get to you and start battering down your front lines, then you're going to have a really difficult time. So it's one of the things you kind of have to keep in mind when facing a Misty Mountains army, is that their morale is not great, and if you can cause a lot of morale shocks and hurt them really, really badly before you get stuck in, or after you get stuck in, then you have a good chance at winning. If not, they will grind you into the dirt just through sheer numbers. But yeah, that's basically all I wanted to say for this video, so I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Bye!